Welcome back to the deep dive. I really hope you're somewhere comfortable right now.
Yeah, hopefully you're really comfortable.
Exactly. I mean, the kind of comfortable where you can just completely let your guard down. Maybe you've got the lights dimmed low, or maybe there's a warm drink in your hand, like tea or coffee
Or
or
maybe something a little stronger.
yeah, maybe something stronger because the vibe we are going for today is very specific. We're going for that late night by the fireplace kind of feeling, slightly existentially terrifying, but, in a fun way.
It really is a distinct mood, isn't it?
Yep.
We definitely aren't doing the morning commute energy today.
No, definitely not.
We are dealing with material that is, frankly, mind-bending. It's the kind of stuff that keeps you up at night staring at the ceiling and wondering if the ceiling is actually looking back at you.
Right, or if the ceiling even exists when you close your eyes. So it's relaxed, it's chilling, and hopefully we can find the humor in just how bizarre reality actually is. We're going to peel back the curtain on the universe today just a little bit. But before we tumble down the rabbit hole, and believe me, it is a very deep one today, I do have to get the mandatory housekeeping out of the way.
Serious part.
The very serious part. I need to explicitly state that this deep dive is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We are here to learn to explore and to maybe have our brains melted just a little bit. We aren't selling you a new religion. We're just unpacking a document.
A noble goal.
Yeah,
And a necessary disclaimer, I think.
absolutely. So let me start with a question for you and really for everyone listening right now. Do you ever feel like you are living a double life or maybe even a triple life?
You mean beyond the usual work-life balance struggle?
Yeah.
Like the corporate me who loves spreadsheets versus the weekend me who just wants to nap?
No, I mean deeper than that, much deeper. Have you ever had a moment where you make a choice, like a big one or a small one, it doesn't matter. Let's say you take the left turn instead of the right, or you decide to date person A instead of person B, or you take that job in Chicago instead of the one in London. And right after you make that choice, you get this really weird, ghostly sensation.
Go on.
A feeling that the one who actually made the other choice is still out there somewhere. Like they're carrying on. Like you can almost feel the vibration of that other life just humming in the background.
That is a very specific sensation, but I think most people have felt that.
Yeah.
That ghost road feeling.
Ghost road.
The path not taken. It usually comes with a pang of regret or maybe relief, and you just think, man, what if?
Well, today's material suggests that the ghost road isn't a ghost at all. It's a highway. And it's paved and there's actual traffic on it. We are looking at the concept that identity and who you think you are is not a solid rock. It's not a statue carved in stone. It's a web. A massive, sticky, infinite web.
That is a really great image. And to navigate this web, to even begin to understand the map of this territory, we are opening up a very specific document today. We are looking at session 309 of the early sessions, book 7 of the Seth Material.
And for those keeping a chronological record or who are sticklers for history, which I know some of you out there are, this session was recorded on December 14, 1966. It is published by the New Awareness Network, and we honestly owe them a huge debt of gratitude for keeping this material available.
1966. It is so interesting to contextualize that date.
Oh, absolutely.
The world was right on the brink of the summer of love. The psychedelic explosion was just starting to crest, and the Cold War was frosty. And here is Jane Roberts, in a quiet living room in upstate New York, channeling this entity named Seth, who is dropping knowledge that makes modern quantum physics look like a nursery rhyme.
It really does. It frames reality in a way that feels incredibly modern, even though it's well over 50 years old at this point. It feels like he's describing the code of the Matrix before the movie was even a glint in anyone's eye. So what is our mission today? What exactly are we trying to extract from session 309?
Our mission is to unpack Seth's radical view on two main things. First, the ego, and how we completely misunderstand it. And second, the concept of probable selves.
And I think we need to put a warning label on this right now, because when people hear the word ego in a spiritual context, they usually think of one thing. They think I need to kill it.
Right. Ego death. It is a massive trope, especially in New Age circles.
Exactly. It's always destroy the ego, become one with the universe, stop caring about your coffee order, and just float away on a cloud. But looking at this session, Seth seems to have a very different take.
A completely different take. This isn't about killing the ego at all. It is about upgrading it. We are basically looking at a software update for the human personality.
I love that. Operating System Ego 2.0. So let's get into section 1, the ego's software update. Because, like we said, the 60s, and let's be honest, the 2020s too, are totally obsessed with dissolving the ego, Why is Seth pushing back against that so hard?
Well, in this session, Seth is addressing the changes that happen to the ego as a result of deep study or consciousness work, or even the psychedelic experience, which was highly relevant at the time. He explicitly states that the ego structure remains. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't vanish into a puff of smoke just because you had a realization.
So I don't just disappear into the bliss of nothingness.
No. And honestly, you wouldn't want to. Seth argues that the ego holds the responsibility of dealing with manipulation within the physical universe.
Right, we still have bodies.
Exactly. You still need to pay taxes. You still need to open doors. You still need to navigate gravity.
Yeah.
You need to know that your hand is your hand and not the toaster.
That seems extremely important, knowing the difference between my hand and a toaster.
Very important. If you completely dissolve the ego, you become dysfunctional in physical reality. You'd essentially be a vegetable with a high vibration. You just couldn't operate here.
Okay, so the structure stays. It's a necessary piece of machinery. But you said it's an upgrade, so what actually changes?
Seth calls it the altered ego. And he gets quite technical here. He says it changes chemically and electromagnetically.
Whoa, hold on. Chemically. Like my actual brain chemistry changes.
He implies a fundamental shift in the biological and energetic makeup of the personality structure. He says, and I want to quote this to get it exactly right, he says the ego becomes more similar to the inner ego than to its old self.
More similar to the inner ego. That implies the ego we know, the one that worries about what to wear and gets mad in traffic, is usually completely cut off from the inner self.
Precisely. Usually the ego is a gatekeeper. Think of it like a bouncer at a very exclusive, very paranoid club.
Okay, I'm picturing a huge guy with a clipboard and sunglasses, arms crossed.
Exactly. This bouncer only lets in information from the physical senses. Eyes, ears, touch. He says, if I can't see it, it's not getting in. He actively blocks out the inner data, like intuition, telepathy, connections to other realities, because he thinks he needs to focus purely on survival in the physical world. He thinks all that inner data is just a dangerous distraction.
So the old ego is just a paranoid bouncer trying to keep the club safe from ghosts.
Yes. But this altered ego, this upgraded version we're discussing, opens the floodgates. The bouncer realizes that the people outside actually bring the party. It becomes aware of large portions of inner reality that were previously denied. Seth says the personality is more integrated, yet through its acceptance of inner data, the ego, to use the term lightly, has expanded.
Expanded, not shrunk. That seems like a really crucial distinction for anyone listening who is maybe afraid of losing themselves to spirituality.
It is vital. A lot of people are afraid of spiritual growth because they think, if I become enlightened, do I stop liking pizza? Do I stop being funny? Do I just become a boring, glowing ball of light? And Seth is saying, no, you become more. You retain your own consciousness of reality, but you can now afford to step out of yourself momentarily to gain further experience. You're not trapped in the small self anymore. You have incredible range.
Okay, so we have this expanded altered ego. How does this actually change how we live, like practically speaking? Because if it's just a feeling inside, that's nice, but does it change my day-to-day existence?
This is where it gets really fascinating. Seth talks about the direct manipulation of reality.
Direct manipulation, that sounds like a superpower, like something out of a comic book.
It essentially is. Think about how you normally get things done. In the past, the ego manipulated the world through physical intervening steps. If you wanted to communicate with someone, you had to walk over to them, or write a letter, or pick up a physical phone.
Right, physical action, force, effort, time, friction, all of that.
But with this expansion, Seth suggests that physical properties are manipulated more and more on a mental level.
On a mental level. So what, like telepathy, telekinesis?
It's more subtle than just moving coffee cups with your mind, though. That is technically part of the spectrum. Yeah. He says many actual physical intervening steps are cut out.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because it sounds like magic, but I think he means something about the efficiency of being.
Think about it like upgrading your internet connection.
Okay, I'm listening.
The old ego is like dial-up internet. You know, the sound.
Oh, God, the screeching, like waiting. Get off the phone, Mom. I'm trying to download a single song.
Exactly.
Whoa.
To get information, you had to go through a lot of physical steps. The connection was slow, it was cumbersome, and it relied on physical phone lines in a very clunky way. You had to dial in, wait for the handshake struggle for a tiny bit of bandwidth.
Right, it was a massive grind to load a picture.
The altered ego is like upgrading to fiber optic. It's direct. It's instant. You cut out the noise. You cut out the handshaking protocols of the old physical methods. You intend something, and the manipulation of reality happens much faster, much more directly, because you are fully aligned with the inner data.
So instead of struggling and grinding to make something happen, which is the old ego trying to force the world to bend you align mentally, and the path just clears.
That is the implication. When the ego is isolated, it feels it has to use force. When the ego is integrated with the inner self, it uses flow. It uses the natural currents of reality. It cuts out the middleman of struggle.
I really like that, cutting out the middleman of struggle. That should definitely be on a t-shirt. But Seth doesn't stop with just making our lives easier, does he? He gets into the absolute core definition of what we actually are. He talks about action.
Yes. This leads us perfectly into section 2, action and identity.
Mm.
Seth has a very specific, almost physics-based definition of action.
It's not just doing stuff right. It's not just running or jumping or typing emails.
No. For Seth, action is the fundamental nature of existence. It is the energy of being. It's the fire of consciousness itself. It's the verb that makes the noun possible. And he says that typically the ego is self-conscious action that attempts to set itself apart from action.
Wait, so the ego is made of action, but it tries to pretend it isn't.
Yes, it tries to view action as an alien object, as something completely outside of itself. The ego says, I am here and the world is happening out there. It creates a rigid separation. It says, I am the subject. The world is the object.
Ah, the classic subject-object split. I am the observer that is the observed.
Exactly. But the altered ego, this upgraded version we're discussing, breaks that illusion. It retains its self-consciousness. It still knows it's an individual, but it can now experience itself as a part of action. It realizes, I am the wave, but I am also the ocean.
That's a beautiful shift. It's not losing the self. It's finding the self's true context. It's like a drop of water finally realizing it's wet.
And Seth says this is a cornerstone for consciousness. Without this realization, you really can't go any further. You hit a hard ceiling.
Now, usually when people reach this state, this feeling of oneness, of being part of the action, they give it a big fancy name. They call it cosmic consciousness.
They do. And I absolutely love Seth's reaction to this term.
He kind of roasts it, doesn't he?
He does. He says this state has been called cosmic consciousness, but it is hardly that.
Ouch. Sorry to all the gurus out there.
He says it's only a first step. It's like graduating kindergarten and walking around thinking you have a PhD. He's not dismissing the experience itself, but he's totally dismissing the label. He's saying don't stop there. That's just the entryway.
So if feeling one with the universe is just the first step, the kindergarten, what in the world are the next steps? What comes after cosmic consciousness?
Seth outlines the trajectory. The next step is when identity is able to include within itself the intimate knowledge of all incarnations.
Whoa. So knowing all your past lives or future lives.
All of them. Simultaneous access. And even then, he says the independence of those various selves is not diminished. You don't become a gray soup. You become a crystalline structure, maybe. Very complex, but distinct.
And beyond that.
Beyond that, you recognize the whole identity with all that is.
All that is. That's Seth's term for God or the source or the universal mind.
Yes. And here's where we get a philosophical nugget that really twists the brain. Seth says that all that is learns who and what it is through us.
Through us. So we aren't just little minions down here following pre-written orders. We are the research probes.
In a way, yes. He says, as each separate identity then seeks to know and experience its other portions, then all that is learns who and what it is.
That implies that all that is doesn't actually know everything yet.
Correct. This is the paradox of knowing. Seth says action never ceases its own exploration of itself, because action inherently creates new unknowns.
That's wild. So the universe isn't a finished product sitting on a shelf. It's not a book that's already written.
No, not at all.
It's writing itself as it goes.
He says, all that is can never know itself completely, since action must always act, and each action creates a new unknown. The journey literally never ends. There is no finish line. There is no point where God sits down and says, okay, I'm done. I know everything now.
That is both exhausting and completely exhilarating.
It creates a sense of infinite purpose. Your life, your discoveries, your software updates are actively adding to the self-knowledge of the entire universe. You are necessary content for the divine mind.
So we've upgraded the ego. We've realized we are part of the infinite action. We've humbled ourselves about cosmic consciousness. Now I think we need to talk about the really trippy stuff.
You mean the you that isn't you?
I mean the multiverse of you. Section 3, probable realities.
This is where the session shifts from spiritual philosophy to hardcore metaphysics.
It really does. And Seth doesn't just keep it abstract and floaty, he gets uncomfortably specific.
He starts by explaining that because action is so multidimensional, it must experience itself as individuals. It creates individuality to multiply itself. But then, he drops the bomb. What you may term the reality of possibilities is an example.
The reality of possibilities?
He says there are many yous in that system, and each you is related psychologically in a vast personality structure.
Okay, so this isn't just me in a parallel universe wearing a cowboy hat.
No, it's much deeper. He says in this system, all the other yous seem to exist in a probable reality. To them, you are the probable one. You are the ghost story.
That's the chilling part right there. I think I'm the real me. I can pinch my arm, I can drink my coffee, but somewhere else another version of me thinks they are the real one and I'm just a vague possibility they didn't take.
Exactly. And Seth uses the example of parents to really drive this point home.
Yeah, let's talk about the parents. Because this hit me really hard when I was reading it. It makes you realize how incredibly fragile your current existence actually is.
He says all of you did not have the same parents.
Wait, how can I not have the same parents? If I have different parents, am I even me anymore?
That is exactly the question. He says these are portions of probable situations existing in your own parents' separate lives. And he gives two specific scenarios to map this out.
Give me scenario A.
Scenario A. In two probable realities, your mother, for example, did not have children.
Okay. So in those realities, I simply do not exist. My mom is living her life. Maybe she's a high-powered career woman. Maybe she's traveling the globe, but there is no me.
You, as you know yourself, do not exist physically in that line. But Seth implies there is still a connection to the potential of you. But let's look at scenario B. This is the real mind bender.
Hit me.
In some chain she married, but not the man you know as your father.
Okay, so my mom marries a guy named Bob instead of my dad.
Right. They have a child. That child is the first son of that reality.
Is that child me?
Seth says a psychological connection exists between the first son in that reality and yourself.
A psychological connection. So we aren't twins. We aren't clones of each other. But we are linked somehow.
You are part of the same identity cluster, if you will. You share a root. You are variations on a deeply complex theme. You might share certain traits, certain deep-seated fears or loves, but physically and biographically, you're entirely different people.
That is so weird to think about.
Yeah.
That there is a brother self out there who has half my DNA, assuming my mom is exactly the same, but a totally different life, and we are connected through the ether.
It completely challenges the very notion of I. We think I is this unique, singular, isolated thing. But I is more like a chord played on a piano. You are one note, he is another note, but you both belong to the exact same chord.
And then there's the third scenario Seth mentions, the strangers in the night scenario.
Yes. In some probable systems, you and your mother would both exist, but as complete strangers.
That is heartbreaking and hilarious at the exact same time.
It creates a very vivid image.
So somewhere out there, in some probable version of New York or London or wherever I might be walking down the street, and I walk right past my own mother, she bumps into me and says, "Excuse me," and just keeps walking. And neither of us knows.
You feel nothing. Or maybe you feel a tiny spark, little flash of déjà vu, a shiver. But you don't know why. You just think, huh, that woman reminds me of someone.
So somewhere out there, I walked past my mom and didn't even wave. That is wild.
Seth emphasizes this heavily. He says now these psychological connections are valid and not merely symbolically so. He is insisting this is literal. This is the actual structure of reality.
Okay, so we have these other selves. We have the me that wasn't born, the me with a different dad, the me who doesn't even know my mom. How does this happen? What is the mechanic behind this? Are we just spawning entire universes every time we sneeze?
Not every time we sneeze,
Oh.
but every time we feel. This leads us to section 4, the mechanics of the multidimensional self.
So it's driven by emotion.
Seth is very clear on this. He says emotionally charged feeling immediately sets up what you may think of as a tangent.
A tangent.
Yes. It is expressed in some reality system. This is the inner nature of action.
So strong emotions are the literal engines of creation.
Precisely. He says those inner thoughts or desires, impulses, not made physically real in your terms, will be made real within other systems.
Okay, so let's get really practical here. Let's say I have a sudden, intense impulse to quit my corporate job and become an accordion player, a professional touring accordion player. I really want to do it. I feel the passion burning inside me, but then my rational ego kicks in and says, "That's stupid, you have a mortgage to pay," so I stay at my job.
In this reality, yes, You stay, you pay your mortgage. But that impulse, that intense emotionally charged desire, was real energy. Energy cannot be destroyed. Action cannot simply stop. So where does it go?
It goes to a probable reality.
Exactly. In a probable reality, you did buy the accordion. You did quit your job.
So my impulse to learn the accordion actually happened somewhere. Poor neighbors in that reality.
Yes, the neighbors are definitely suffering over there. But the you in that reality is fully living out that path. They're experiencing the consequences, the joys, and the failures of being an accordion player.
It makes you completely rethink every regret you've ever had.
It really should. Because nothing is wasted. No desire is truly unfulfilled. It is just unfulfilled here.
But does that other me matter to this me? Or are we just totally separate bubbles floating away from each other?
That is the feedback system. Seth says we are psychologically influenced by these probable personalities.
Influenced how? Exactly.
He says they represent a whole personality gestalt. We're part of a massive team, essentially. And even though we don't consciously realize it, there is leakage. There is constant background communication.
Leakage, is that where dreams come in?
Yes. Seth mentions that in the dream state, these quotients communicate in highly codified symbols.
Codified symbols. Why don't they just send me a clear text message like, hey, accordion career is going great. Please send money.
Because our psychology, and our psychologist, Seth notes, are dealing with one-dimensional psychology. We don't have the framework to consciously understand a multidimensional message. So it comes through as weird symbols, confusing dreams, sudden flashes of inspiration.
So a nightmare might be a bleed-through from a probable self who is in actual physical danger. Or a dream of flying might be a probable self who, I don't know, became a pilot or an astronaut.
It's very possible. The intense emotions bleed through. The experiences echo across the entire web of the Gestalt.
And Seth talks about latent abilities, too. This part actually gave me a lot of hope.
It is a very hopeful concept. He says they remain latent within you and unexpressed within this system. You have their abilities unused.
So if my probable self is a master pianist, I have that ability literally latent inside my structure.
Yes, and vice versa. You remain latent in their personality structures, and your main abilities are unused within their systems.
It's trade-off.
It is specialization. You can't be everything all at once in one single narrow focus. You choose a lane. But the other lanes are still fundamentally part of your highway system.
And he clarifies that these other selves aren't better than us, right?
Right. He says, now, these do not represent more highly evolved cells necessarily at all. They're just developed differently.
So I shouldn't feel jealous of the accordion king version of me.
No, you really shouldn't. He might be great at music, but terrible at whatever you are good at here. Maybe he's lonely. Maybe he's completely broke. Maybe he desperately misses the stability that you have. You are both just exploring different facets of the exact same diamond.
I love that. We are all just researchers gathering data for the greater soul.
Exactly. And Seth mentions that if you physically met them, even though you are far from identical, you would instantly know that you had found unknown portions of yourself.
That instant recognition, that would be an incredibly powerful moment.
It would be profound.
So we've got the past, the present, the probable. What about the future? Section 5, the future, and the joke.
Seth touches on this briefly, but it is significant. He says each probable self you see also has future selves.
Oh, God. It's fractals. It's literally fractals all the way down.
It is. The structure is endless. The multidimensional identity includes the probable selves, reincarnated selves, and selves more highly developed. And he says the divisions are entirely arbitrary. It all just leads back to the entity.
The entity, that's the big boss. The
source of your specific consciousness family.
You know, for a disembodied entity speaking through a woman in upstate New York in 1966, Seth has a surprising amount of personality. He's not just a dry textbook reciting facts.
Not at all. And that brings us to the end of the session where we get a really great glimpse of that humor.
The pregnant moment. I laughed out loud when I read this in the transcript.
It is charming. He addresses Rubert, which is his personal name for Jane Roberts.
Right. He always calls her Rubert.
And he says, one small note to my friend Rubert. I have told her this before. It seems on several occasions he is not pregnant. Only with ideas.
Only with ideas. That is such a gentle, witty way to address what was clearly a physical anxiety for her.
It totally humanizes the interaction. It reminds us that Seth isn't just a cold computer dumping data. He is observing them. He cares about them. He sees Jane worrying about a physical symptom, probably feeling bloated or heavy after these sessions, and he says, relax. It's creativity, it's not biology.
It also shows that the physical and the mental are so tightly linked. Being practically pregnant with universe-altering ideas can physically feel heavy in the body.
Especially when dealing with material of this magnitude. Jane was channeling concepts that rewrite the foundation of reality. That has to have a severe physical toll or sensation. She was literally birthing a new worldview.
Absolutely, she was. And the session ends on such a nice, quiet note. Joan says she got a strong feeling of peace as Seth spoke his very last words.
And that piece is so important to highlight, because this information can be terrifying. I'm not real. There are millions of me. The universe is an endless void of probability. It could easily induce panic, but the actual result is peace. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because it takes all the pressure off. If there are infinite versions of me and every single unexpressed impulse gets lived out somewhere else, then I don't have to worry so much about making the perfect choice every time. I don't have to have crippling FOMO because I am doing it somewhere else. Here, I just have to focus on being this specific me.
That is a beautiful synthesis. It completely validates your current experience while connecting you to the infinite. You are totally free to be you because the other bases are already covered. You don't have to be everything. You just have to be this one part of the action.
Exactly. We are part of a massive interconnected web of identities. Our ego is learning to see this without losing itself in the process. We are upgrading from the dial-up connection of I am entirely alone to the fiber optic connection of I am part of all that is.
And that is the ultimate safety net. You cannot fall out of the universe. You cannot lose your fundamental self. You can only explore more of it.
Man, I need a minute to let that sink in.
It is a lot of philosophy to digest in one sitting.
But we don't have a minute. We have an outro to do. So if you are listening to this right now and your brain is buzzing, don't just take our word for it. Stop scrolling, stop doom scrolling, and start reading.
Go directly to the source. This material is dense, it's rich, and it's incredibly rewarding to read yourself.
You can find this material and so much more at sethsender.com/early sessions.
And again, massive credit to the New Awareness Network for publishing these works. They are preserving a vital legacy of consciousness exploration.
Seriously, go buy the books. Put them on your shelf. Let them freak out your guests when they come over.
They make for amazing conversation starters. Like, hey, do you think your mom is really your mom in a parallel universe?
Before we sign off today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. Just something to chew on while you try to fall asleep tonight.
Let's hear it.
We talked heavily about how emotional impulses create new realities. Every time you have a strong desire to do something but you don't do it, a new world spins off where you actually did it.
Right.
So what reality did you just create by choosing to listen to this deep dive instead of doing something else?
Well,
Somewhere in a probable universe, did you turn this off 5 minutes in? And what is that version of you doing right now? And more importantly, are they having a better time or are you?
I think the version listening to us is definitely having the better time.
I'd like to think so too. Thanks for diving deep with us today. Keep your ego upgraded, and we will see you in the next probability.
Good night, everyone.